Dichotomy. A division into two mutually exclusive, opposed, or contradictory groups, such as a dichotomy between thought and action. False dichotomy. A logical fallacy in which only two alternatives are considered when in fact there are other options. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Our distant ancestors looked up into the night sky in wonderment at the things that they saw. The world around them was a beautiful place, if difficult to comprehend. Hundreds of years ago, educated people in Europe started to realize that there were things about the world that couldn't be investigated by things like philosophy or theology, but only by observation and reason. What eventually developed was the concept of the scientific method, a way to investigate the world around us by gathering evidence, forming hypotheses to explain them, and then testing their validity. Over time, humanity was able to discover astonishing things about our world and the universe that the ancients could never have even imagined. Just in our own lifetimes, we've discovered beauty in this universe that primitive man could never have dreamed about. Take, for example, some of the things we've learned about the universe from things like the Hubble Space Telescope, the Horsehead Nebula, 1,500 light-years from Earth, or the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light-years away, or... Wait, 2.5 million light-years? Oh, that's right. If you're a young Earth creationist, you're not allowed to believe in that. You're allowed to believe that these stars are a few thousand light-years away, but you're not allowed to believe that these galaxies are millions or even billions of light-years away. You're allowed to believe that this is a rock, but you're not allowed to believe that geological processes took millions of years to form it. You're allowed to put oil into your motorcycle, but you're not allowed to believe how old the crude oil really is. And don't even get me started on evolution. Are you starting to get a little tired of this nonsense? Maybe because you have one of these and you actually insist on using it? Meanwhile, back to that false dichotomy thing. This is one thing that's perpetuated by a lot of anti-science folks, and ironically by some atheists as well. The implication here is that you have to make a choice between science and theology. That makes about as much sense as saying that if you believe in French grammar, you're not allowed to believe in Chinese history. Well, it's an absurd claim. Take, for example, some of today's prominent scientists. Francis Collins, the current director of National Institutes of Health and former director of the Human Genome Project, and an evangelical Christian. Robert Baker, groundbreaking paleontologist and Pentecostal preacher. Kenneth Miller of Brown University, biology professor and author of Finding Darwin's God. Simon Conway Morris, British paleontologist best known for his study of the Burgess Shale fossils and past contributor to the Royal Institution Christmas lectures. Martin Novak, director of the program for evolutionary dynamics at Harvard University. These are just a few of the Christians who are making major contributions to science today. Then there's my personal favorite, the father of the Big Bang Theory, George Lemaitre, physicist, astronomer, and Catholic priest. Some of the most renowned figures in the history of science have been Christians, so obviously the suggestion that you can't have both science and religion is an irrational claim, regardless of who you hear it from. Science is a completely different topic from theology. It's based on facts, research, and detailed observation of the world around us. If some denomination tells you to ignore facts, that you're not allowed to believe the sky is blue, the problem is with that denomination, not the sky. So, if you're sick and tired of being told what not to believe by people who don't know any better themselves, and you're tired of the U.S. being a laughingstock to the rest of the world, but at the same time you don't want to discard your faith, you might feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. But the fact is, you do have options. The simple fact is, most Christians are not biblical literalists. For example, a number of mainstream Christian denominations are on record as supporting the teaching of evolution. Check and see if there are any of them in your area. Also, check out the Clergy Letter Project, an open letter supporting science education signed by over 12,000 Christian clergy. Search through that list, you might find some of them in your area. And don't give up on the evangelical churches too quickly. Dr. Bruce Waltke, formerly of the Reformed Theological Seminary, surveyed other evangelical theologians and found out nearly half of them accept evolution. A quick phone call to a local church might get you some of the answers you're looking for. But before we go on, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Ostracism is a very real thing, and if you're a person who likes to think for yourself, you may have run into it already. Anytime you start thinking a little differently than the crowd, especially on things that have been politicized, you run the risk of catching hell from the conformists around you. And I'm not just talking about the "you're not invited to my birthday party" type of nonsense. A minute ago I mentioned Dr. Bruce Waltke, a renowned Old Testament scholar. In a modern-day reenactment of the Galileo affair, he was recently sacked from Reformed Theological Seminary for suggesting in a YouTube video that evangelicals should support the fact of evolution or risk being reduced to cult status. That video from BioLogos was quickly taken down, unfortunately, before I had a chance to make a copy of it. So, yes, the risk of ostracism is very real. How you deal with it depends on your own situation and what kinds of risks you're willing to take to use this thing for what it was intended. There are a lot of Christian-related channels and web pages out there, but unfortunately a number of them know pitifully little about science, and their theology is all too often at a grade school level. But there's also a number of good theological resources out there, both on YouTube and on the internet. The BioLogos channel here on YouTube is one good starting point for a theological discussion of science, and there are others. See some of the links in the description. A number of them talk about the relationship between faith and science and reconciling the two. For science, of course, seek out things like science sites, library, college courses, etc. A theologian can talk to the theology, but if you really want to understand the science, you need to pick up a science book. Anyway, take care. Good luck in your search.